Voltron was one of the first Japanese cartoons that got imported into America and was then what some aficionados call cobbled together, where Voltron was dubbed into English because, of course, you have to have the kids understand it, and then it was re-edited to remove some content that was culturally weird. Like, for example, now we're very familiar with anime tropes of like the characters like doing the little X eyes and then they have the big teeth and they go, yay! Well, they cut those kinds of moments out from Voltron, but Let's look at the landscape here in the early 80s, because this really started with Star Blazers and Gatchaman, Space Battleship Yamato, and G-Force. So these were some of the first Japanese animated properties that were adapted for American audiences. One of the deals with syndication, and these are some numbers, that's why she's here to memory jog me. These are some of the numbers you need to know. It's usually 13 and 65. 13 is generally the number for Saturday morning cartoons. You need about 13 to do a full Saturday morning season as of the 1980s. Obviously, we have to remember that the Saturday morning cartoons are gone now, so as of last year. So no more Saturday morning cartoons. The market won't support it anymore. And then 65 was the number you needed for weekday afternoon syndication. So after Reagan deregulated children's television in 1983, Filmation's Masters of the Universe was the first show that had 65 episodes, and it was produced. That's why there's so much stock footage in it. That's why He-Man throws the same 2 boulders every time he picks up a rock. is because they needed to find a way. They had to find a way to make those episodes every week. And so they were like, well, we're going to rely on 60% stock animation and 40% new stuff to craft the story. Well, some enterprising producers in America said, you know what? There are all these cartoons from Japan that are already made.
They're already animated.
The animation is already done. Why don't we import those, license them, redub them in English, and then distribute them? Well, then you run into another problem. 52 episodes was the Japanese preferred run on a lot of these shows, so they didn't have 65. So a lot of producers in America who needed some shows decided, well, what we can do is, if it's not longer than... If it doesn't have 65 episodes, we'll just get 2 or 3 shows that kind of look the same, and then we'll say they're all related.
It's a mashup.
Right. So
Yeah.
Star Blazers and Gatchaman didn't have this problem, G-Force. And then you might remember Tranzor Z, which was an adaptation of Mazinger Z, which was the original Super Sentai. He was the original super robot from Japan in the late 60s, I believe.
But I'm sure you'll remember the next one.
Yes. So Robotech is the most famous one because it really didn't delete a lot of the cultural things that are found in the animation. It didn't delete a lot of the edgier storytelling, and it cobbled together 3 shows: Macross, Moss Peta, and Southern Cross, and then it made them all one universe over a multi-generational saga. Then you had Transformers, which were Diaclone toys. Now this was a situation where the toy companies from America were importing Japanese toys and then giving them new mythologies with new animated series. So Transformers did this by adapting Microchange and Diaclone, and then you also have Tonka and GoBots doing it with Machine Robo. And then 3 years after Challenge of the GoBots aired on American television, the Japanese finally got off their stool and said, hey, we should probably animate our own show and call it Machine Robo. And it's really, really weird.
You should definitely check it out if you get a chance.
Yeah, it's they apparently back then culturally they found the sentient robots to be sort of an immature concept, and so they focused their story on characters that were half human, half robot for the Japanese GoBots show. Then we have World Events Productions. They were looking to do the same thing, and so in 1982-83 they were looking for a property that they could adapt. And they found 3 shows that they wanted. They wanted Lightspeed Electroid Albegus on the left. They wanted Armored Fleet Die Rugger 15 in the middle, and they wanted Daltanius. And if you look in the earliest, demo reels, Daltanius is the 3rd robot in this series. Now, Daltanius is where we get Lion Force because of a mistake in translation and language barrier. We get Voltron today. When they decided they were going to license the shows, they contacted Toei Animation via phone, because there was no internet back then, and they said, hey, we've decided the shows we want are Albegus, Die Rugger, and Daltanius. And they were like, what? And they said, the lion one. Oh, no problem, no problem. Then they get the box of tapes sent to St. Louis. Well, the box of tapes doesn't have Daltanius in it. It has another show called Beast King Go Lion. Right. So when you think back to the earliest marketing for Voltron, you might remember that there were 3 Voltrons in stores. They were Roman numeralized, 1, 2, and 3. And that was because the concept was you had a Voltron of the near universe, you had a Voltron of the middle universe, and you had a Voltron of the far universe. But because of their new obsession with Beast King Go Lion, like they broke open the tapes, they started watching it, their first reaction was, this isn't the right show. Then they're like, but it's awesome. So then they said, no, we're going to make this show first. This is going to be the first show. And so they kind of changed the order in which they were going to produce the shows. They said that originally they were kind of producing Vehicle Voltron and Voltron Lion Force at the same time, but then they quickly just pushed on adapting Lion Force. So Voltron stands out from a lot of other cartoons for several reasons in the 1980s, even its American contemporaries. For one, the cartoon actually has a meta plot. It has a progressing story, unlike He-Man and Transformers. Now, with Transformers, they then launched into a movie, and then they decided to skew older after that. So season 3 of Transformers really starts to try and have a meta plot. But before that, it was kind of the episode of the week. They fought Megatron, and everything was fine. He-Man fought Skeletor. Nobody really changed. With Voltron, as you know, things were a little more dynamic. Even if you weren't very aware of it as a kid, you kind of knew, yeah, Sven was gone, and the princess took over the ship, and Urak got fired, and they got Lotor.
He got fired.
Fired. And they got Lotor. Voltron just had a very interesting meta plot like that, which was unique. You had the princess's relationship with her dead father that continued to progress as well, King Alfor. And the other thing I liked about Voltron that was unique was that it was a Helm's Deep type of story, meaning that it was 5 people trying to defend a planet of beaten down civilization from this dominating empire, and it was the odds were always 400 to 1 every time King Zarkon showed up. It got me excited for the show every time I would see it.
That's not to say that there weren't some pretty bizarre things that are still in there from the anime. So
yeah.
I mean, I don't really know what that's supposed to be. I don't even know what that is. But
yeah,
pat in his head and rubbing his tummy.
It's he's in a sailor suit or some sort of fringy sailor cowboy suit. He's got Harry Potter glasses. He's got permed hair, and he's got a beret. Is it man or woman? Is it Frodo Baggins? I don't know. Yeah, he's got a neckerchief like all of our favorite cereal mascots. He's just a very strange character, no matter which way you cut him.
And he's got a bolt in a kneecap.
Yeah. And then of course,
apparently
then the other odd thing about Voltron was that it was always on a shoestring budget to get adapted because it was not part of the Hollywood system. It was done by independent animators who were independent production who was syndicating it. So if it wasn't the princess, Hagar, or Nanny, all of the other women in the show were pretty much voiced by men. So
badly.
Like very badly. So I will do the impression, and it will be perfect because I cannot do an impression of a woman. They would get the guys who did the pilots, the male pilots, to do these incidental voices, and they talked about how it was just ridiculous, and they'd laugh about it while they were recording it. So if you watch the original Voltron, you'll see these flashbacks, and this is Koran's wife, or it's Koran's wife, and she'll show up and she'll be like, "No, I don't want to leave you." And you're like, that's a guy. That's totally a guy.
I'm really happy that you just did that.
Thank you. So the opening of Voltron we all just heard is it's ominous. It's got the voice of Optimus Prime, Peter Cullen. It's just it's a very dark kind of mysterious, intriguing intro. And yet the content of the show itself, while still, I think, superior to a lot of shows in the 80s, was a little more lighthearted. You had Pidge, you had the mice, and the way they were characterized was very much for kids. If you haven't seen Beast King Go Lion, the original show, imagine this.
Hey, has anybody seen it?
Yeah, has anyone seen Beast King Go Lion? Oh, this is going to be good. All right. If you haven't seen Beast King Go Lion, take that concept and reverse it.
Yeah.
Here's a clip from the intro to Beast King Go Lion.
Well,
It's so good.
It's a little more upbeat.
And it's a whole lot darker.
It feels very karaoke. It's
evil.
yes. It just has a different feel to it. However, the show itself should not be judged by the upbeatness of the opening theme. So
I have to tell you, I had never seen Voltron like growing up. It wasn't playing in my market, I don't think, and so I never saw it. So after we had met, he bought the Japanese Go Lion that was subtitled. And we sat down to watch it, and I wasn't expecting very much because I was just like, it's not really my thing. I'm not really that into anime or whatever. And he put it on, and I was just completely mesmerized. And I was like, this is the most awesome show I've ever seen. And he was like, are you serious? Because for him, it was a big, it was jarring because the song wasn't there, the music wasn't there. It wasn't really the same show he grew up with. But I was like, no, this is awesome.
So should we talk a little bit about Go Lion?
Yes, let's talk about Go Lion. Because you can't really talk about Voltron without talking a little bit, at least, about Go Lion. And, I mean, I think that it's really interesting because they saw this show, which we will show you some clips from it, and they immediately thought, this would be a great show for children. And you're about to see why that's kind of scary. So... this is the story of Voltron. You will know it is time to avert your eyes when you hear someone scream like this. Let's begin.
You have people in this show getting whipped, maimed, stabbed, tortured, decapitated, crucified. There's implied rape, demonic frogs killing puppies, blood raining from the sky that sets everyone on fire, ninja commandos that kill women and children, villains drinking the blood of their enemies, forcing their enemies to drink the blood of their own people, cannibalism and forced cannibalism as people are made to eat their own dead, giant robots crushing people and eating them as food, characters willing to blow themselves up for a cause, and plain outright suicide.
And yet we never got to see this.
You wouldn't adapt that into a children's show. I mean, come on.
Is that not the greatest thing ever?
I instantly fell in love with it, and I had to watch every episode.
What'd you think of Voltron then when you watched it? Were you let down? Care Bear?
I will decline to answer that in a room full of Voltron fans. No, it's just very different. I mean, I can see why, some of the stuff is just cool no matter what. The combining robot cats. Cats are always awesome. They combine. They're like giant robots. He still kills people with swords. In that scene with Pidge, which is a little bit more intense in the Japanese, he still does that in the American version. He still goes up and threatens to grenade himself to kill Lotor. I always want to call him by his Japanese name, so if I do that, please forgive me. There are a number of differences between Voltron and Go Lion, as you might imagine. In Voltron, they really talk a lot about the origin myth. In Go Lion they talk about the origin myth. In Voltron, he's just tricked by Hagar. And so then he's split into 5 parts. But in Go Lion, he is a sentient being that no one really knows where he came from or who created him. And he just gets a little too big for his britches. He's killing all these demons in space, which is pretty awesome. And they call them demons and stuff like that. And then the goddess of the universe comes in and she's like, Voltron, or Go Lion, you have gotten too big, you're too out of control. So I'm going to smack you down. And so he was a sentient robot, but she broke him into 5 lions, and so he no longer had sentience. So his hubris basically had taken him down in that way. And so he was there on the planet of Altea.
Eris.
Eris, sorry. That's just the one I've seen. And so they weren't really sure how to make it all work because they didn't create him. He just fell from the sky and landed there. So it was kind of like that Macross or Robotech, if you watched Robotech, where this alien form fell to the ground, and they had to figure out, retro-engineer it, like, how does this thing work? So it's kind of like that.
Yeah. Yeah, so one of the other big changes, of course, is that Sven did not go to the hospital planet or wherever he was after Hagar tricked him. Sven, named Shirogane, dies. And he...
You know what's funny? I gotta say this real quick. The Japanese do not believe in spoiler alerts. Like, they just say it right out. Like, so the name of that episode is Brave Shirogane Dies. And you're like, gee, I wonder what's going to happen in this episode.
And the best part is it's juxtaposed with music that literally goes da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da.
Yeah.
It's like, wow.
Today on Go Lion, people die.
And in the original Voltron, of course, they had an out because Sven came back. Later on, he met Princess Rommel and helped her with the rebellion on Planet Doom.
And they really do look alike, but it's not originally the same character. This is his brother, who then, of course, finds out that his brother has been killed, and he's completely distraught, and that's why he wants to murder Zarkon.
Dibazal.
Dibazal, that's what I was going to say, but you were like, what?
That's the other thing about this show is that the origins of the pilots are completely different. In Voltron, they are 5 space explorers from Earth seeking Voltron. In Golion, they are the last 5 remaining surviving humans of Earth, because as they returned from their space exploration, they discovered that Earth had been destroyed in a nuclear war while they were gone. And so then they're captured by Zarkon's guy, Urak, because he's just rounding up some slaves for the gladiator pits.
Which he whips mercilessly.
And then they're brought in that way, and then they escape and then find their way to planet Eris Altea. And from there, they discover the secret of Beast King Golion.
So again, lots of pretty messed up stuff in the show.
There are so many shocking moments that butt up against, the moments you think you can relax. We were watching it and we're sitting there and suddenly the Dibazal, Zarkon's army, is feeding the slaves to each other. Like, he's like, oh, you're hungry? Here, and he brings them a platter of their own dead corpses, the corpses of their own dead friends, and then they're like, oh, and they start eating, and you're like, wow, we've turned a corner here.
Yeah, that's like in the first episode. It's pretty, like, wow, okay. Yeah. Another thing that happens in Voltron is that Prince Lotor is very into Princess Allura, and he's kind of got this fixation on her, which is the case in the original series, but it's not just about that. This woman down here is actually his mother, who died, and she looks almost exactly like her, so that explains why he's got this weird Oedipal complex thing, and it's really super creepy weird. Like, it takes his crush on Allura in Voltron is creepy to me, but it's a whole other level in this show. It's like, that's disturbing in this really bizarre way. Like, he wants to have her as his girlfriend or whatever, but he also wants to murder her. It's just very bizarre.
Because he watched his father murder his mother.
Yeah.
And the other weird thing about that is that you ever noticed how Lotor doesn't look as reptilian as his dad, but he doesn't look completely human? Yeah.
Yeah.